accepted responsibility for what he is responsible for. He stands up and has media conferences each and every single day. But I make this point, that the National Parliament should be meeting tomorrow. And the fact that it isn't is, I think, a source of regret. We are of the view that when Parliament is due to sit on August 24, it must sit. That there is a committee that's been established, including the Speaker and the President of the Senate, along with the managers of business for both the government and the opposition in the House of Representatives and the Senate. It's working through the issues. Any restrictions based upon medical advice, of course, should be implemented, but it shouldn't be beyond the capacity of our national parliament to meet when it's due to meet next in 3 weeks' time, because I think that the Australian people who are going to work, providing essential work in particular, would expect that our politicians aren't above that, and that we're able to participate in parliamentary processes which needs to debate these and other issues. We raise this today, the 3-point plan, because it's not possible to raise it in question time tomorrow, which we would in the ordinary events timetable. So I do think that it is important that the National Parliament requires accountability to be held, but this is a global pandemic, as Chris has said. This is a national issue. It requires a national response. It requires the coordination of the national government with state and territory governments, of course, under the governance system that we have.
Guys, there's been thousands of new cases down there over the past couple of weeks. I mean, do you think the situation down there is officially out of control?
Well, I mean, the Premier has been very clear. He's declared a state of disaster. He's imposed very harsh restrictions, and as Anthony said, he's taken the decisions that are necessary. And it's very clear that tough action is necessary to get this virus under control in Victoria. It's not to say that what's been done so far hasn't worked, because the situation would have been much worse without the Stage 3 restrictions, but it hasn't worked well enough, and hence the Stage 4 restrictions have had to be implemented.
I make this point, though, that the federal government, the Morrison government, have been supportive of the changes that have been announced by Daniel Andrews yesterday. But you can't have the national leadership of the coalition government saying one thing and their backbench members, whether they be Victorian backbench members or New South Wales members like Craig Kelly, making the sort of irresponsible, outrageous comments that they have made on social media and in other forms. Mr Morrison needs to get his backbench in line, because it is unacceptable, the comments of Craig Kelly, the comments of Tim Wilson similarly, and many others are completely unacceptable. And I think that, quite frankly, the actions of the Victorian Liberal Party opposition stand in stark contrast to what we have done, whether myself as leader, Chris as our Shadow Health Minister, Tony Burke in Industrial Relations, Jim Chalmers in Treasury, where we have put forward constructive suggestions. We've continued to play a constructive role. We will do that. But Mr Morrison needs to get his own troops in line, because some of these comments are quite unacceptable. He has said, Craig Kelly, the comments that he said, don't bear repeating, as Chris Bowen has said, but frankly, I was shocked by them, that any member of Parliament would be so irresponsible at a time where Victorians are doing it tough. These restrictions are tough, but they are necessary.
Do you guys also think that the COVID Safe app should be looked at, given what's happened in Victoria and some of the rising cases in New South Wales?
Well, it's not working. I mean, it's found a handful. And the first key element to fixing it is to admit there's a problem. Now, we would all cut the government some slack to say the app was developed quickly, But they've got to just fess up to say, yeah, it's not playing a role. I mean, you've had Victoria slammed into a very harsh lockdown, partly because contact tracing is so difficult. And there are thousands of people working on contact tracing, and they deserve to have the app working to help them. And we say this with no sense of, triumph. We say we supported the concept of the app. Unlike the National Party, we actually encouraged Australians to download it. But it's not the fault of Australians who have downloaded it. It's simply not playing the role it should. And the first step to fixing that is for the government to accept it hasn't worked as well as it should, to listen to the expert advice. I mean, I've heard it, you've heard it, the IT experts who've given advice as to what can change, and to take that on board. Right across Australia, the app needs to work. It needs to work in Victoria, it needs to work in New South Wales, it needs to work everywhere. And it just has to be called out. It's not working as well as it should and could.
And on the paid pandemic leave stuff, do you guys have any ideas about who should pay for it? Because everybody's running out of money. The government's under financial strain, so is the state government, and so is all the businesses.
Well, a range of businesses have introduced paid pandemic leave to their great credit. What we've said is that there's a role for the government to step in and provide some support for this to occur where there are gaps. No one should be, the key principle is this, no one should be in a circumstance whereby they are going to work because they don't feel like they have an option. And they're the circumstances which are there. We know that that is the case. We've known that that was the case for some time. And the failure to have paid pandemic leave means that there's cost to that as well, because people going to work and therefore spreading infection has a cost to it. And we're seeing the cost in terms of economic cost with the Victorian shutdown. We're seeing the cost as well with restrictions on economic activity throughout the country as well. So we do need to start at first principles, and the first principle is make sure that no one is put in a position of choosing between looking after their health and looking after their family. Thank you.
That's the Labor leader Anthony Albanese speaking in Sydney there, together with Chris Bowen, the Shadow Health Minister. They were supporting the measures taken by the Labor Premier of Victoria, Daniel Andrews, as well as criticising the federal government for postponing Parliament until the end of this month. Parliament was meant to resume business this week and next. Fears about 5G have prompted astonishing scenes around the world, with telecommunication towers set on fire, including in Australia. Tonight's Four Corners investigates the rise of the anti-5G movement and the spread of wild conspiracy theories linking the COVID-19 pandemic to the technology's rollout.
By February, the torrent of misinformation about coronavirus was so great, the United Nations branded it an infodemic.
Fake news spreads faster and more easily than this virus, and is just as dangerous.
Within weeks, the 5G conspiracy theory gathered more steam when it was raised by controversial US doctor Thomas Cowan at an anti-vaccination conference.
There has been a dramatic and quantum leap in the last 6 months with the electrification of the Earth. And I'm sure a lot of you know what that is. It's called 5G.
Cowan was on probation after being found guilty in 2017 of unprofessional conduct by the Californian Medical Board.
And I'll finish with anybody want to make one guess as to where the first completely blanketed 5G city in the world was. Exactly. So when you start thinking about this, we are in an existential crisis here, folks.
Days later, this video of the lecture was promoted by US pop singer Kerry Hilson to her 4.2 million followers on Twitter. Then rapper Wiz Khalifa fueled the conspiracy theory with a tweet to his 36 million followers. Other celebrities shared the theory too, including Woody Harrelson, John Cusack and MIA.
Celebrities really become super spreaders in all of this. They have millions, if not tens of millions of followers via their various social media accounts. And so once they start posting about these conspiracy theories, even critically, that makes them much more visible and reaches a much larger and more diverse audience.
And you can catch tonight's Four Corners, The Truth About 5G at 8:30 on ABC TV and on iView. 2 American astronauts have splashed down off the US state of Florida, marking the end of the first commercial crewed mission to the International Space Station. It's also the first space capsule to make an ocean landing since a joint US-Soviet mission in 1975.
We're now just about
300 meters. We are braced for splashdown.
Copy, brace for splashdown.
History in the making as the Dragon capsule returns home.
As you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation for splashdown.
The first private spacecraft to bring astronauts back to Earth.
Dragon SpaceX, separation confirmed.
Their journey began from the International Space Station. The spacecraft's owned by US company SpaceX. Inside, NASA's Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are at the controls. As they hurtled through the Earth's atmosphere, a heat shield protected them as temperatures reached up to 2,000 degrees Celsius. Then, at last, a glimpse from the Earth.
We are visual on 4 chutes out.
Parachutes slow the rapid descent before splashdown.
Splashdown.
This move to the commercial sector marks a major change. With the SpaceX reusable rockets and capsules, the cost of spaceflight is coming down.
SpaceX has done the whole thing, so they can launch, they can dock, they can orbit the Earth in a spacecraft, and they can return to Earth. And if you can do that safely, then anybody who chooses to, and if the company SpaceX in this case accepts their money, then anybody can pay to send somebody into space.
Racing to the scene, the recovery vessel. Local boats have come to take a look too. The scorched capsule is hoisted on board. There's a slight delay as noxious fumes from the landing are cleared.
The hatch is now open. Thank you for doing the most difficult parts and the most important parts of human spaceflight.
Then, at last, the first breath of fresh air for 2 months. Both astronauts now out and ready to head home to see their families. It's the end of their mission, but a new era in commercial spaceflight is just beginning.
We all wish you a safe journey home and a happy reunion with your family soon, and we look forward to seeing you in person as well.
Taking a look at the weather first in the capital cities around the nation. Cloudy in Brisbane, mostly sunny in Sydney, mostly sunny in Canberra. Melbourne, a possible late shower. A few showers in Hobart, partly cloudy in Adelaide, and showers with a possible storm in Perth. Darwin, mostly sunny.